Okay, so it looks like I'm live now again. So anyway, what I was saying earlier was I just wanted to share this example. I had a client I was talking to that said that she was working with a functional doctor. They told her that she just had like a low grade infection. They also told her that, she had some things going on and they were just going to give her like 1 month of support and call it a day. Well, she had some follow up blood work done. This was her more recent blood work. And the other thing that came up on the report was that her inflammation had increased since her prior lab was done, prior blood work. So we were talking, and she's like, I'm struggling with weight, I'm struggling with sleep, different things like that. And this low white blood cell thing has been going on for forever, and the doctor doesn't seem too concerned about it. And she also mentioned that she has low neutrophils. And I was looking at this, and to me, the much bigger issue is that she's got high lymphocytes, very high monocytes, high eosinophils, and her basophils are on the edge of being high as well. So, in my mind, her immune system is screaming for attention here. And the reason why I don't necessarily see this as a low grade infection like the functional medicine doctor was referring to her in this way is because when white blood cells are low chronically, to me, that's a chronic infection. It's not a low grade infection, it's a chronic infection. Just because her white blood cells aren't high doesn't mean that it's a small issue. If anything, to me, it means her body is depleted and more vulnerable to like these long standing stressors. And monocytes, like, I haven't seen monocytes at a 20. Usually it's like maybe a 10, maybe a 12 is a pretty significant amount, but 20 is very high, and usually there's a strong indication of viral stress when, especially with lymphocytes elevated as well. So this is a panel you can get from your doctor through insurance, extremely cheap or free through your doctor. And it's great information. And you can see over here is the range that is considered normal from kind of your regular lab view. When you get your lab results, typically the lab range is a little bit more broad. So usually people get their blood work back and nothing is flagged because it's still within this range from the regular lab. Now with this, I plug in people's blood work to look at the optimal range instead of the lab range, and that's a more narrow range. You can see, for instance, lymphocytes, I want to see between 30 to 35, 40 at the most, I would say. I'll give a little leeway sometimes for people if they're feeling good and not having any issues and they're pretty close to optimal. I take it with a grain of salt, but these are the optimal range, and lymph neutrophils 50 to 60 versus 38 to 74. That's a much broader range. So basically your body has to be very dysfunctional in order for it to be flagged by the lab. And even then, some doctors, when it's out of the lab range, they're like, they don't necessarily want to do something medically about it because a lot of medical interventions have harmful side effects to them. So doctors have to be very judicious about when they intervene with someone's health because they know medicine and surgeries have risks, and they have to balance it out with if the risk is worth the benefit, right? So it's not that doctors are not wanting to help you or disregarding your concerns, and maybe they're trained a little bit to have that mindset where they're really Like they're just there to help you with medical problems. And if you don't have a medical problem, then they don't know what to do with you or they don't have time to do much about it. Um, in this case, what I like to do is I like to see, first of all, if anything's out of the optimal range. And if there's something out of the optimal range, then I prefer to further investigate it a little bit if we can, budget wise. But certainly, there are tons of natural things we can do to support that person and the stress that that immune system is under. And this is always in the context of other things in their blood work, like what does your blood sugar look like? What does your cholesterol look like? What does your thyroid look like? What does your iron panel look like? I don't want to kind of give support willy-nilly and not look at the whole picture because, you know, God forbid we do something to support your immune system and it's too much stress because there's other problems going on elsewhere that need to be dealt with first. So obviously I prefer to get a full blood work panel done, but I really wanted to share this today as like a quick tip for you to be able to look at your blood work and see like, okay, are my eosinophils higher than a 3? Are my basophils higher than a 1? Are my monocytes higher than a 7 or 8? Are lymphocytes over 35, 40? Or are my neutrophils over 60, closer to 70? You know, those will give you clues. So, neutrophils, when this is high, when this is above this range, it's typically bacterial driven. So think about root canals, think about GI health, think about sinuses, the oral region, the gut. Those are really big areas where we might have some bacterial issues. Now, if you currently have a UTI that's bacterial or BV, then of course that's going to be part of why your neutrophils are high. So think about it in the context of your health, of course, but that's typically bacterial. Lymphocytes are generally viral. So when this is the dominating elevation, we currently have more viral stress on the immune system. So we might want to do an EBV panel, or we might want to look at your nutrient levels, your health overall, because to me, viruses really are a problem when the person is weakened overall. Maybe they're not getting good sleep, maybe they're not eating well, maybe they're over exercising, maybe they live in a moldy environment, maybe they've got so many other issues going on in their gut that their immune system is kind of overwhelmed, and that's when viruses can take that opportunity because the immune system and the person is kind of in an overstressed, depleted state. So same thing with like zinc deficiency, or, you know, that's just a random example. But viral load can go up. Usually there's other things that led to that issue. And it's not quote technically just a virus issue. Now, if you just had COVID or a cold or the flu, you know, a week or two before your blood work was drawn, might be probably just from that. So it's always smart to get your blood work done at least a couple weeks after you've had any kind of feeling unwell. Monocytes, this tends to go up with a viral issue, but it can sometimes be fungal. And in some cases, especially if I see eosinophils elevated with monocytes high or basophils elevated with monocytes high, these last 3 here, if there's more than one of these 3 elevated, it's very likely there's a parasite load in the body that needs to be addressed, stressing the immune system. And a lot of times when we see the eosinophils elevated, there's histamine, there's going to be allergies, there's going to be asthma or hives or anxiety or insomnia or some kind of reflux. There can be GI issues, there can be more skin issues, more just kind of an inflammatory issue going on. And what drives eosinophils is a few things. It can be parasites especially if there's more than one of these three elevated. Very suspicious for that. If it's just eosinophils, if everything else is optimal and eosinophils is the only thing elevated, it can still be parasites, but it could also be like a food sensitivity issue or an environmental sensitivity. So mold or pollen that's really bad, or gluten that you haven't cut out but your body's immune system's reacting to it, or different things like that. I will say people talk about pollen and allergies right now, and while it is a factor, there are other things in the body that if they're overwhelmed and there's other imbalances going on or deficiencies or mold or fungal overgrowth, you're going to have a lot more allergies than you would necessarily have to. Like, you don't have to have terrible allergies if you're addressing the other things that are making your immune system more overreactive to these pollens. So just a little side note on that. The basophils this one's probably the most rare one for me to see elevated. And when that one's up, it's typically intestinal issues, parasites, that type of thing. So I know I kind of covered a lot here. I know this is like one little part of an overview of blood work, but at the same time, this was really interesting because when I was talking to that lady earlier with the lymphatic system activated and everything, she's like, hold on, let me pull up my blood work. And her neutrophils were at a 70. And everything else, for the most part, was pretty close to optimal, if not optimal. And so for her, she had, it was like, oh, there's more bacterial stress going on. So let's think about the gut. Let's think about the oral region, the mouth health, because those are two of the largest microbiomes in our body, meaning the most amount of bacteria is in the gut and in the mouth. So, and she brought up the fact that she takes probiotics and eats fermented foods, which is good, right? That's good. But if she's already got too much bacteria, you can have too much of a good thing. And taking probiotics and fermented foods is not always in the best interest, and certainly not going to help with inflammatory bacteria necessarily. So long story short, I just wanted to hop on and share this little tip so that you could have the opportunity to pause the video, pull up your blood work, look and see if you're within those optimal ranges, start to get some more clues about what type of immune support your body needs right now. And obviously this is like one piece of the puzzle, but I think it's really interesting, and a lot of times I get some pretty good information from this simple little blood test. So I hope that was helpful.